Welcome to the first Code with Me video for Chapter 15. In this video, we'll talk about specifically positioning when it comes to elements. So go ahead and open up Chapter 15 into your brackets and load up the positioning folder, your index file, in a browser. When you pull it up, you should see something that says positioning, and the common positioning values are relative and absolute, and a bunch of other stuff. So the first activity we're going to do is 15.1, we're going to preview the page. We already did that. Display the code for positioning.css. It's opening positioning folder, CSS folder, positioning.css. A few basic rules have been created for you. Study them and make sure you understand what every selector in declaration does. I won't go through it all because hopefully by now you know what all this stuff does. So in the H1 rule, we're going to position it relatively. H1 right here, position relative. Save, refresh, and nothing appears to have happened because we have not specified any offsets. So let's go ahead and go back to the H1 and let's add left of -40 pixels and top of 50 pixels. Now for good developers, we notice that this is not in alphabetic order, so we can actually take this left and move it up one line so that now it's in alphabetic order. Save, refresh, and now you see that the H1 element has moved down 50 pixels and has moved left 40 pixels because we are decreasing the space, or in this case, moving the element left -40 pixels. It may seem a little odd to say left in -40 instead of just 40, because if we say 40, it's pushing it from the left 40 pixels. So -40 pixels means that it's pulling it left 40 pixels. The paragraph did not slide up to fill the empty space because once we have an element that is positioned relatively, it still takes up the available space that it's supposed to take up, but it's just being moved from its relative location. Next activity, okay. The heading is on top of the paragraph. What? Yeah, the heading is on top of the paragraph because the heading is positioned and the paragraph is not. So if we go back to the P and say position relative, save, now the paragraph appears above the heading. No Z index was used, which we'll get to later, but the paragraph comes later in the HTML code, so it is higher in the stacking order. If we want to overrule this, instead of getting rid of the position relative, we can actually go up here in the H1, say Z index, and just give it a value of 10, which means that now the H1 is above the paragraph because the Z index default of the P tag is, well, nothing. Alright, so we're going to delete the position declaration from the P rule, and we're going to actually position the H1 absolutely. Absolute, not absolutely. Okay, top 50 pixels, left -40, Z index 10. We're good. Save. Now before I refresh, what is this going to do? Well, we positioned it absolute, and if you recall from the lecture videos, that'll be in the top left corner by default. The top is 50 pixels, so it's going to be moved down from the top 50 pixels and left -40, which means that it's starting from the top left, it's going to move left even more by 40 pixels, which means that the element itself is moved off the page. However, I also want you to keep in mind that the space that it was supposed to take up in relation to position relative is now being taken up by the paragraph, because once you have something absolutely positioned, it is taken out of the normal flow of the page, and everything else moves up to fill it. Let's see. Okay, as the window size changes, so if you want to resize things, you'll notice that even though the paragraph is moving in relation to the window, the absolutely positioned element, the H1, is staying exactly where it is, regardless of where the browser is being moved, only because the top left corner is either not being moved or being moved with it, even though the paragraph is moving no matter what we move. Okay, next activity, we're going to combine the relative with absolute. So we're going to edit the wrapper up here and say position relative. And because we're good developers, we go ahead and move it up here for alphabetical order. No offsets. Save, refresh. And now, since we actually specified the wrapper as a position relative, that means that technically, based on anything inside of it, it is moving it based on the parent element. And the wrapper, which has a background color of CCC, so gray right here, the H1 now has the position absolute of the parent element, in this case, the wrapper. So it's basing it on the top left corner of the wrapper itself. And it's positioning it absolutely based on the relative position of the wrapper, in this case, moving it left 40 pixels and from the top 10 pixels. If we move the wrapper down, such as we say margin top, let's just say 200 pixels. Save, refresh, and the H1 moves along with it. So again, you can actually combine the relative and absolute positioning, because as soon as you have something that is absolutely positioned, it is basing it on the parent element. In this case, the parent element is relatively positioned. Okay, and that's all we're doing with this. The next one, we're going to be dealing with the coins folder. So coins right here. Index page in Chrome. Let's get back to our files, coins, open up index in our browser. And we have some nice items right here. Let's see, some basic styling exists, yada yada yada. Okay, take a few minutes to study the structure of the HTML so you're familiar with it before writing the CSS. So we take a look at the HTML code. We have links, body, div, a bypass link right here, header with the role, h1 nav, on order list, main, article, image tag, h2, p tag, section, good, footer. All right. So let's go into the CSS and edit fasteddy.css. Take a few minutes to study the rules and declarations. Everything in the starter file has been covered in this book, though you might want to work through the comment at line 46 once you have finished the chapter. Let's take a look. Line 46, background clip. We'll get to that in just a minute. All right, so we're going to add an image-only div. It will add a non-essential image to the page purely for design purposes. Because it is non-essential, it should not be coded as an image tag in the HTML. Non-essential images should be CSS backgrounds, but you need an extra HTML element to hold the CSS background image. You'll create the element right now. So in the HTML file, we're going to click to the right of the opening main tag on line 26. To the right of the main tag. Enter, code the following div. Div ID coin, and close the div. So now we've given it an ID so we can easily select it in the CSS versus having to go through the first child, second child, info type, etc. We use the div element because there's no semantic or structural meaning. Its job is to simply act as a container for a CSS background image. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So in the CSS, save the HTML, CSS, going to go to the click to the right of the For Students comment at the bottom of the page. For students, hey, that's you. Enter twice, enter the new comment, positioning, positioning. Enter twice, calling it by the ID coin. Going to add a few new lines so we can actually see what we're doing. Coin, background, URL, quotes, period, period, moving out of the previous or the current directory, onto the images directory, and ancient heads.png. No repeat, and center align. Perfect. Border is red solid and 1 pixel. Height is 146 pixels and width of 100%. Alright, the background declaration centers the background image in the div and stops it from repeating. The border declaration is temporary so you can see the entire div box. The height is set to the height of the image. The width ensures the div spans the full width of the wrapper, because that's what the parent element is. Go back to the HTML, and, well, the wrapper of the main, well, the div tag inside the main, which is inside the wrapper, and that's it. So centering the image inside the div will also center in the wrapper. Save the page, go back to Chrome, and refresh. Now we have the coin, we have a nice red border so we can see what it is, and it's center aligned. Okay, we will position the coin image over the brown bottom border under the header. So right here. So we will edit the coin rule to position it absolutely. So go back to the CSS, which were there. Coin, position absolute. Close our brackets because we're good developers. And automatically order this. My spacing's off and that's bugging me. Okay, save, refresh, and now you may notice that the image itself has been taken out of the normal flow of the page. So therefore the next image displays in this space. Only because of the position absolute, and we did not give it an offset, it is being taken out of the normal flow even though it's still present. Let's see, okay. For the main element, we're going to go up to the main, so line 79 right here. Position relative. Now this is again mixing the absolute and relative so that we're positioning it based on the parent element of the main. Save, refresh, and now it's relatively closer to the actual size of the main because the width of 100% is the parent element, in this case the main. Let's see. The div tag displays the top of the main, which is the nearest relatively positioned ancestor. Now you just need to pull it up. To center it up, pull the image up by half of its height plus half of the header bottom border thickness. Blech. Let's try it again. To center it, pull the image up by half of its height. So its height is 146. Half of the height is 73, and then the border is, how big is the border? Border. Where is the border? Border. Here we go. Header bottom, or border bottom, is 60, so half of that is 30. So 73 plus 30 is 103. So we'll go to the coin. I'm going to say top negative 73 plus 30 is 103 px. And I don't like the spacing. We save, we refresh, and now the image has appeared on top of the brown border. Hey, look at that. So now what we can do is we can actually remove the red border as well. Huh, why isn't that in the instructions? Oh, okay. So we're going to remove the border because that's in the instructions. Okay. Save, refresh, and now we have the coin on top of the border and moving with the actual page, making it nice and easy for us to have sort of a nice 3D effect. For the next activity, we're going to take this skip to main content and remove it from the page, only visually, but it's still going to be there content-wise. So we're going to go after the coin rule, new comment, bypass link positioning. Okay, so we're going to access it by saying bypass, or whatever your bypass link is going to be ID'd as. In this case, it's just bypass, making it nice and easy. We're going to say, come on, background color, FF0, border, 000, that's a hex code, solid and 5px, color of 000, font size of 1.5 REM, font weight of bold, and padding of 1 REM. Okay, let's save that. Let's refresh. And now the bypass link, whoa, that really sticks out. So it's fairly easy to see, but it shouldn't be visible by default. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go back to the bypass thing and say position, absolute. Now that just removes it from the actual content. So by itself, it appears over the rest of the contents. We're not done yet. We want to say top and negative 99999 pixels. You can say whatever you want as long as it is gone from the page. So we save, we refresh, and now skip to main content is no longer visual, but if you take a look at the code, skip to main content is still there. So if people can't view the CSS, or for some reason they want to access it, then skip to main content will still show up. Now, even though it no longer displays, because we positioned it off the page, if you want to, you could say negative 1000 pixels, which would do the exact same thing. You could say negative 999999999 pixels, or just 999 by itself, which doesn't do anything, so you do need the unit. It'll disappear. Again, as long as you go to negative infinity, it's perfectly fine. You can even say left of negative a gazillion, and it'll still disappear. But I'm going to go with top negative 999 just to make it nice and easy. So if someone does want it to show up, we can actually highlight that by giving the element focus. So bypass focus, which means that as soon as it has focus, it's going to move. In this case, since we've already set position absolute, it's going to base it on the position of the parent element, in which case this is the main. Is it inside the main? No, it's inside the wrapper, so it'll be inside the wrapper. But because we also say, or because we're specifying the position, it will appear in the top left corner. So top 10 pixels and left 10 pixels. Technically, I should switch that because left comes before, or L becomes before T. So we save, we refresh, and visually there's nothing, but if you press the tab key, the nice yellow box comes up allowing you to skip to the main content. Now why is it appearing to the left in the top over here? Because the main element has a position relative. However, the wrapper does not. So by saying left and top, it is based on the next positioned element, which in this case is the body or the browser. So it's basing that on the top left. Let's see. So once you click away from it or you tab away, then the skip to main content link disappears. Let's see. So now we're actually going to go back to the wrapper and specify that as a position relative so that the link appears back up here versus over here. So we go to the wrapper, we say position relative, we save, we refresh. Visually no difference, but as soon as we tab to it, you can see the skip to main content appears inside the wrapper now. We click away from it or tab away, and it disappears. Alright, so the bypass link loses focus, the rule is no longer in effect, and the link jumps back up to its position above the top of the wrapper. We can also shift tab back to it to make it reappear. And if we want to, we can click it and go down to the main content. Alright, that is everything for this video. In the next video, we're talking more about floating and Flexbox. If you have any questions about anything in Chapter 15, please send me an email or hit me up on Twitter, and I'll get back to you with the best possible answer.